The morning sky above Gaia Nova shimmered with unusual activity. Jin-Ho Park, chief environmental officer of the colony, squinted through his observatory's telescope. The strange lights moved with purpose, not like the random paths of natural space debris. "Those aren't meteorites," he muttered, adjusting the focus for a clearer view. Jin-Ho's fingers moved quickly across the holographic controls. He captured images of the objects and sent them to the colony's defense systems for analysis. His heart beat faster as he waited. After 20 years of peaceful existence on this planet, something felt different today. The observatory sat atop the tallest living tower in New Seoul, the main settlement of Gaia Nova. Unlike the concrete and steel cities of old Earth, New Seoul's buildings were grown, not built. The tower beneath Jin-Ho was actually a massive genetically modified tree, its interior spaces carefully cultivated over decades. Windows were transparent cellular membranes that regulated temperature naturally. The building breathed with the planet. Jin-Ho's communication device chimed. The face of his daughter, Su-min, appeared in the air before him. "Father, have you seen the alert? Defense systems detected unknown objects entering our atmosphere." "I'm looking at them now," Jin-Ho replied. "They move with too much control to be natural. I think we have visitors." Su-min's expression grew serious. As the colony's diplomatic liaison, first contact situations fell under her responsibility. "I'm calling an emergency council meeting. Please join us immediately." Within the hour, the colony's leadership gathered in the living chamber, a room where the walls were formed from luminescent moss that responded to the emotional energy of the occupants. Today, the moss glowed with anxious orange and yellow patterns. Governor Do-hyun, a tall, thin man with steady hands and calm eyes, called the meeting to order. "Our sensors confirmed that 5 artificial objects have entered orbit around Gaia Nova. They appear to be spacecraft of unknown origin." Taiwan, the colony's defense coordinator, stood up. His usually relaxed face looked tight with concern. "The vessels are approximately 3 times the size of our largest ships. Their design suggests they're built for both space travel and atmospheric entry. They're scanning us with technologies we've never seen before." "Hostile?" asked Guy Seok, the resource manager. "Unknown," Taiwan replied. "But they've made no attempt to hide their presence or their scanning activities." Su-min rose next. At 32, she was the youngest person on the council, but her diplomatic skills had earned everyone's respect. "I recommend we send a greeting message on all standard frequencies. If they can travel between stars, they likely have translation capabilities." Governor Do-hyun nodded. "Approved. Keep the message simple and friendly." The response came faster than anyone expected. Just 20 minutes after sending their greeting, the main communication screen in the living chamber activated. The image showed a being unlike anything humans had encountered before. The creature had a wide head with 4 eyes arranged in a horizontal line. Its skin was bluish-gray and seemed to shimmer like metal under certain lights. When it spoke, its mouth moved in strange patterns, but the words came through in translated Korean. "I am Commander Ekris of the Mock Exploration Fleet. We have detected your colony and wish to establish diplomatic relations." Su-min stepped forward as the designated speaker. "Welcome, Commander Ekris. I am Su-min Park, diplomatic liaison for the Gaia Nova colony. We are pleased to make first contact with your people." The conversation that followed seemed friendly enough. The Mock claimed to be explorers from a system 20 light-years away. They expressed interest in learning about human culture and the unique ecosystem of Gaia Nova. But Jin-Ho noticed something in Commander Ekris's 4 eyes, a calculation that didn't match his friendly words. After the initial contact ended, Jin-Ho pulled his daughter aside. "Something feels wrong," he said quietly. "Did you notice how they asked more about our resources than our people?" Su-min nodded. "I felt it too. They seemed particularly interested in our living architecture and symbiotic technology." Over the next 3 days, the Mock remained in orbit. They sent down small, unmanned probes that they claimed were for atmospheric testing. Taiwan's team tracked these probes and discovered they were taking detailed scans of the colony's food production areas, water purification systems, and energy generation plants. On the fourth day, Commander Icarus requested a face-to-face meeting. A small shuttle descended from one of the mock ships and landed in the designated area outside New Seoul. 3 mock delegates emerged, led by Commander Icarus himself. In person, the mock were even more intimidating. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and powerful limbs. Their skin had a metallic quality that seemed to shift colors slightly as they moved. Each wore what appeared to be a ceremonial uniform with symbols that might have been military ranks. The meeting took place in an outdoor gathering space, a living amphitheater, where the seats were formed from shaped grass and moss. Jin-ho sat behind his daughter, observing the mock carefully. "Your world is fascinating," Commander Icarus said, his translator conveying the words while his actual speech consisted of clicks and humming tones. "We have never seen such integration between technology and biology. Our philosophy is harmony with our environment." Sumin explained, "We learned from old Earth's mistakes. Instead of fighting nature, we work with it." "Most efficient," Icarus nodded. "We would like to study your ancient forest preserves. Our scientists are particularly interested in the unique properties of your oldest trees." Jin-ho tensed. The ancient forests were sacred to the colonists, the source of their most advanced biological technologies and home to species found nowhere else on the planet. Governor Du-hyun spoke carefully. "The preserves are protected. We limit even our own access to prevent contamination." "We understand caution," Icarus replied smoothly. "But surely scientific cooperation benefits everyone. We could offer technological exchanges. Our mining and resource extraction methods are highly advanced." That was when Jin-ho knew for certain. He passed a note to Taiwan. "They're resource hunters." The defense coordinator gave a slight nod. He had already reached the same conclusion. The meeting ended with promises of further discussions. As the mock returned to their shuttle, Taiwan quietly activated enhanced security protocols throughout the colony. That evening, the council met in secret, in a room shielded from potential scanning. "They're not explorers," Taiwan stated flatly. "Their questions, their technologies. They're assessing us for resource value." The way they discussed extraction methods wasn't hypothetical. "I agree," said Sumin. "Every conversation I have with Commander Icarus feels like an interrogation about our resources, not a diplomatic exchange." Jin-ho added, "The ancient forests contain our most valuable biological compounds. If they're specifically targeting those areas, they know exactly what they want." Governor Du-hyun looked tired. "What do you recommend?" "We politely refuse access to the preserves," Sumin suggested. "Their reaction will tell us everything." The next morning, Sumin transmitted their careful refusal to the mock ships. The response was immediate and confirmed their worst fears. All 5 mock vessels moved into attack formation. Their scanning beams intensified, now clearly targeting the colony's defensive systems. Taiwan rushed into the living chamber where the council had gathered. "They've activated weapons systems. Energy readings are off our charts." A communication came through. Commander Icarus's face appeared on screen, all pretense of friendliness gone. "Your biological technologies are too valuable to be left in the hands of primitives. The mock Imperium claims this world by right of superior strength. Surrender your colony and you may serve as workers under mock guidance." Jin-ho looked at his daughter, then at the others around the table. 2 centuries of peaceful existence had not prepared them for this moment. But 2 centuries of working in harmony with their world had given them something the mock couldn't understand. A different kind of strength. Governor Du-hyun stood tall. "We refuse your terms, Commander. Gaia Nova is our home, and we will defend it." As the communication ended, the sky above New Seoul filled with the threatening silhouettes of mock warships. The first contact had gone wrong, but the people of Gaia Nova would soon discover they weren't as defenseless as the invaders believed. The emergency council room buzzed with fear. The curved walls, grown from living plant tissue, normally glowed with a calm blue light. Today they pulsed red, reflecting the colony's alert status. Tai-1 stood at the center of the room. The defense coordinator's normally neat appearance had given way to rumpled clothes and tired eyes. He hadn't slept since the mock ships took up attack positions. Their weapon systems are unlike anything we've encountered, Tai-1 said, displaying holographic simulations of the mock capabilities. The 3D models showed massive energy cannons and strange devices that seemed to bend light around them. We have perhaps 3 days before they break through our orbital defenses. Jin-Ho watched as the faces around the table fell. Their small colony had never needed strong military protection. Earth had promised they would never be alone. But space was vast, and help was far away. Hejun, the colony's elderly governor, shook his head. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly as he spoke. The Earth Defense Fleet won't arrive for at least 2 weeks. Can we evacuate? Asked Yuna, the transportation coordinator. Tai-1 shook his head. The Mach have positioned ships to intercept anything leaving the atmosphere, and we don't have enough ships for everyone anyway. What about negotiations? Su-Min suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps we can offer limited access to some resources. They don't want limited access, Jin-Ho said quietly. You saw how quickly they dropped the friendly act. They want everything. The council fell silent. Outside the windows, they could see the people of New Seoul going about their day. Most citizens knew something was happening. The mock ships were visible in the daytime sky, but they didn't yet understand the danger. The silence was broken by the soft chime of the door. A woman entered, moving with quick, purposeful steps. Dr. Myra Kang was not a regular council member. As the colony's lead biologist, she rarely involved herself in political matters. Excuse the interruption, she said, bowing slightly to Governor Hejun. But I believe this emergency qualifies as need to know for my research. Hejun gestured to an empty seat. Dr. Kang, please join us. Myra was in her 50s, with streaks of gray in her black hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She placed a small device on the table, and it projected images of what looked like brain scans. While you've been tracking the mock, I've been working on something that might help us, she said. A weapon? Ta-1 asked hopefully. Not exactly. Myra touched the device, and the images changed to show various plants and animals native to Gaia Nova. For 20 years, I've been studying the neural connections between Gaia Nova's native species. This planet has something I've never seen elsewhere. A natural communication system between different life forms. Jin-Ho leaned forward with interest. As environmental officer, he had worked with Myra before, but she had never shared this research. Communication between different species, he asked. Myra nodded. It's subtle, but real. The planet's fungi create vast underground networks that connect plant roots. The plants interact with insects, which influence larger animals. It's like a natural internet, but instead of sending data, it shares basic survival information. This is fascinating, Dr. Kang, Governor Hejun said, but how does it help with our current crisis? Myra's eyes lit up. Governor, I believe I have a solution. Not a conventional weapon, but something the mock cannot possibly anticipate. She tapped her device again. The hologram showed a complex machine with biological components. I call it the Harmony Network. It's designed to amplify and indirect the natural communication system already present on Gaia Nova. The council members exchanged confused glances. You want to talk to the trees? Someone asked skeptically. Much more than that, Myra replied. I want to create a coordinated defense using every living thing on this planet. Su-Min looked doubtful. Dr. Kang, with all respect, how can plants and animals defend us against advanced alien weapons? Myra smiled. Individually, they can't. But together. She brought up new images showing microscopic organisms. These bacteria can break down synthetic materials in days. These plants can grow several inches in hours when properly stimulated. These insects can coordinate attacks with hive mind efficiency. She looked around the table. Imagine all of that happening at once, directed at specific targets. Jin-Ho felt a surge of hope. It sounded impossible, but if anyone could make it work, Mirai could. He had seen her bring back extinct plant species through sheer determination. How long would it take to implement this? Governor Hejun asked. The basic system is ready, Mirai said. I've been testing it on a small scale for years, but to expand it to a defensive network covering key areas, 3 days, maybe 4. Taiwan grimaced. We might not have 4 days. Then we need to buy time, Su-min suggested. I could reopen communications, propose negotiations that would delay them. And we can use our existing defenses strategically, Taiwan added. Not to win, but to slow them down. Governor Hejun looked at each face around the table. Then he nodded decisively. Dr. Kang, you have the colony's full resources. Whatever you need, it's yours. Taiwan, prepare our defenses to buy maximum time. Su-min, contact the Mach and stall them however you can. As the council dispersed to their tasks, Jin-Ho approached Mirai. You never mentioned this research before, he said quietly. Mirai's face grew serious. Some technologies are too powerful to reveal before they're needed, and I wasn't sure it would work. She paused. I'm still not sure. What can I do to help? Jin-Ho asked. Come with me, she replied. I could use someone who understands the environment as well as you do. Jin-Ho followed Mirai through the living corridors of the colony center. They descended in a transport elevator made from a hollow plant stem, going deeper than Jin-Ho had ever been before. The elevator opened into a vast underground laboratory. The space was incredible. Transparent tubes ran across the ceiling, carrying glowing fluids in various colors. Walls of living plant matter housed thousands of small containers, each with different organisms inside. At the center stood a large machine, part mechanical, part biological. This is the Harmony Core, Mirai explained. It translates electrical signals to biological ones, and back again. Jin-Ho stared in amazement. How long have you been working on this? Since we arrived on Gaia Nova. Mirai walked to a control panel and began activating systems. I was part of the original survey team. I detected the neural networks then and realized their potential immediately. For defense. Mirai shook her head. For communication. Understanding. I never imagined we'd use it like this. She looked sad for a moment. Then her expression hardened. But I will not let the Mach destroy what we've built here. Over the next few hours, Jin-Ho watched as Mirai's team of scientists emerged from other parts of the lab. Clearly, she had not been working alone. They moved with practiced efficiency, preparing equipment, checking readings, testing connections. On screens around the lab, they could see the Mach ships beginning their first probing attacks. Taiwan's defensive systems responded, deflecting the attacks but losing power with each engagement. Su-min's voice came over the communication system. The Mach have agreed to delay their main assault for 12 hours to consider our surrender terms. That's the best I could do. It helps, Mirai replied. Keep them talking as long as possible. As night fell over New Seoul, Jin-Ho helped Mirai's team install connection nodes in key locations around the colony. Each node was a small, living device that could tap into the natural communication networks of nearby plants and soil. These will act as relay points, Mirai explained as they placed a node in the heart of the agricultural sector. When activated, they'll allow us to send signals through the natural networks to organisms within range. Jin-Ho watched the node sink roots into the soil, merging with the environment. And these organisms will listen. Obey. Not exactly, Mirai said. Think of it more like suggesting a course of action that aligns with their own survival instincts. We're not controlling them. We're unifying them, helping them understand that the Mach are a threat to all life here. By dawn, the nodes were in place. The colony's citizens had been informed of the danger, and evacuation to underground shelters had begun. From orbit, the Mach would see a colony preparing to surrender, while beneath the surface, a different kind of preparation was underway. In her laboratory, Mireille connected herself to the Harmony core for final adjustments. Jin-Ho watched nervously as small plant-based electrodes attached to her temples. "Are you sure this is safe?" he asked. Mireille smiled slightly. "No, but neither is alien invasion." She closed her eyes as the system activated. For several minutes, she remained still, her expression changing subtly as if she was listening to distant voices. When she opened her eyes again, they shone with wonder. "It's ready," she said softly. "And Jin-Ho, this planet is more alive, more aware than we ever imagined." Above them, the Mach ships moved into final attack position. Time had run out. The emergency meeting was called just as the Mach ships began their descent. Red warning lights flashed throughout New Seoul as citizens hurried to underground shelters. Governor Hejun gathered the council members and key personnel in Dr. Mireille's laboratory deep beneath the city. "We have less than 2 hours," Ta-1 reported, his face grim. "Their initial attacks have disabled our orbital defenses. Landing craft are preparing to deploy." Dr. Mireille led the council members through her underground laboratory, walking briskly past rows of experimental plants and monitoring equipment. The lab was larger than most had imagined, stretching under a significant portion of the city. Soft blue light came from bioluminescent panels on the ceiling, giving the space an otherworldly glow. She stopped before a pulsing bioelectric apparatus in the center of the main chamber. The machine, if it could be called that, was unlike anything they had seen before. It was part mechanical, with control panels and displays, but largely biological. Transparent tubes containing glowing fluid connected to various plants and small organisms. At its center, a spherical chamber pulsed with gentle blue light, almost like a heartbeat. "I call it the Harmony Protocol," she explained. "It functions as a planetary neural network, allowing conscious communication between all living things on Gaia Nova." The council members stared in silence. Finally, Young-Ho, the agricultural minister, laughed nervously. "You want us to talk to plants?" "No," Mireille corrected. "I want us to become one with them. Temporarily." She touched a control panel, and holographic images appeared, showing brain-wave patterns alongside plant electrical signals. "All life on Gaia Nova shares a unique feature," Mireille continued. "Their neural patterns can synchronize under certain conditions. I discovered this 15 years ago when studying how the native fungi connect tree roots in the ancient forests." Jin-Ho stepped closer to examine the pulsing core. "You've been developing this in secret all this time?" Mireille nodded. "I wasn't authorized to pursue this research officially. The ethical implications were complicated. But I knew someday we might need it." Governor Hejun frowned. "What exactly does it do, Doctor?" "It amplifies and translates neural signals between species," Mireille explained. "In simple terms, it lets humans connect their consciousness to the awareness of other living things, and not just connect, briefly merge with them." Su-Min looked skeptical. "Merge consciousness? That sounds like science fiction." 20 years ago, so did growing our buildings from living tissue," Mireille replied. "Gaia Nova's ecosystem is unique. The boundaries between separate life forms are already more fluid here than on other worlds." A loud boom shook the laboratory. Dust fell from the ceiling. "They've entered the atmosphere," Ta-1 said, checking his tactical display. "We're out of time." Governor Hejun looked at each council member, then back to Mireille. "What do you need from us, Doctor?" "Volunteers," she said. "People willing to connect to the protocol. Each person can help coordinate a different part of the planet's defense." "Is it safe?" Jin-Ho asked. Mireille hesitated. "It won't cause physical harm, but the psychological experience is intense. You'll remain yourself, but also experience being something else simultaneously." "I'll do it," Jin-Ho said immediately. "So will I," Su-Min added, stepping forward. One by one, other council members volunteered, though Young Ho and a few others held back, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. Mei worked quickly, instructing her assistants to prepare connection nodes, small, organic discs that attached to the temples of each volunteer. Meanwhile, other lab workers rushed to deploy hundreds of bioreceivers across the colony and surrounding wilderness. These receivers will extend the protocol's range, Mei explained as she helped attach a node to Jinho's head. They tap into existing plant networks and amplify the signal. Jinho felt the node warm against his skin. What will I experience? That depends on which networks you connect with, Mei said. Your consciousness will be drawn to life forms that match your own neural patterns. Some connect with plants, others with insects or larger animals. Another explosion, closer this time, shook the lab. The Mach have landed on the outskirts of the city, Ta-1 reported. Their ground forces are deploying. We need to activate now, Mei said urgently. She moved to the central control panel. Everyone with nodes, please sit in the connection chairs. Jinho, Su-min, and the other volunteers took their positions in a circle of specially designed chairs surrounding the Harmony core. Each chair was partly grown from living tissue, with organic interfaces that connected to their nodes. When I activate the protocol, don't fight the experience, Mei instructed. Let your consciousness expand. Remember why we're doing this, to protect our home. In New Seoul's central plaza above them, the final bioreceivers were being positioned by Mei's team. Throughout the colony and deep into the surrounding wilderness, hundreds more stood ready. As the first mock landing ships touched down just outside the city limits, Dr. Mei activated the protocol. Jinho gasped as the connection formed. It began as a tingling sensation at his temples, then spread throughout his body. His vision blurred, then cleared, but what he saw no longer made sense. He seemed to be viewing the world from multiple perspectives simultaneously. He could see the laboratory around him, but also the forest floor several kilometers away. He could feel the wind through leaves that weren't his, sense vibrations through roots that stretched deep into soil. His mind struggled to process the conflicting information. Don't fight it. Mei's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Let the patterns merge. Jinho took a deep breath and stopped trying to separate the experiences. Suddenly, everything shifted. His consciousness expanded, connecting with something vast and ancient. The network of trees in the old-growth forest where he often took samples. He could feel their slow, patient awareness, the steady exchange of nutrients and information through fungal networks connecting their roots. Across the laboratory, Su-min made a small sound of wonder. Her consciousness had linked with the colony's native bird population, thousands of minds that processed the world through sharp vision and awareness of air currents. She could see the mock ships and soldiers from hundreds of aerial viewpoints simultaneously. Each volunteer found themselves connected to different networks. One merged with the colony's insect population, another with aquatic life in the nearby river system. Governor Hejun, to everyone's surprise, connected with the microscopic bacteria that helped maintain the colony's living architecture. The world around them transformed. What had been separate awareness became a unified field of consciousness. Jinho could still think as himself, but he also experienced being part of something much larger, a planetary intelligence awakening to a threat. Through Su-min's bird connections, they all saw the Mach forces deploying. Heavily armed soldiers in environmental suits moved in precise formations. Large vehicles with drilling equipment followed behind them. They're heading for the ancient forest first, Jinho realized. The thought somehow communicated to all the others. They want the biological compounds in the oldest trees, Mei's consciousness replied. Now we respond. What happened next occurred without words. The merged consciousness of humans and Gaia Nova's ecosystem recognized the threat and acted in unified defense. No orders needed to be given, like a body responding to an infection. The response was automatic and coordinated. In the forest, trees began releasing specific pollen combinations that confused the sensors on mock environmental suits. Fungi accelerated their growth, creating networks that appeared overnight across the invaders' path. Roots shifted underground, creating unstable terrain beneath their heavy vehicles. Jin-Ho experienced it all as if it were his own body responding. He felt the trees draw up water to create pressure in their cells, felt the calculated release of compounds that would interact with mock technology. Through Su Min's birds, they located the mock command center. Through another volunteer's insect connection, they sent swarms to infiltrate equipment joints and ventilation systems. Even the bacteria connected to Governor Hejun began breaking down specific synthetic compounds in mock equipment, not randomly, but with precise targeting guided by the human consciousness in the network. In his physical body, Jin-Ho sat motionless in the laboratory, eyes open but seeing elsewhere. A single tear rolled down his cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of experiencing the world as a connected whole rather than as separate parts. This is what we've been missing, he thought, and felt the agreement of the others ripple through the network. The mock forces, expecting to face primitive weapons or at most basic defenses, found themselves confronted by an entire planet that seemed to have awakened to resist them. Every step they took was opposed not by soldiers, but by life itself, coordinated with an intelligence they couldn't comprehend. And somewhere in the network, Jin-Ho sensed Mai-Rei's satisfaction. This was what she had worked toward for decades, not a weapon to destroy, but a system to unify, to heal the artificial separation between humans and their world. The world around them had indeed transformed, but more importantly, so had they. Commander Icarus stepped out of his command ship onto the soil of Gaia Nova. The air was rich with oxygen, almost too thick for his lungs despite his environmental suit's filters. He surveyed the landing zone with all four of his eyes, each capable of seeing different light spectrums. His troops had already secured a perimeter around their ships, setting up defensive positions facing the edge of the western forest. A beautiful world, he remarked to his second-in-command, Vril, who stood beside him checking equipment readings. Rich in resources, perfect atmosphere for adaptation. The High Council will be pleased. The human colony is only 15 kilometers east, Commander, Vril reported. Their defenses appear minimal. No significant weapons detected. Icarus made a clicking sound that served as laughter among the mock. Of course not. These humans build their cities from plants. What do they know of real power? The mock forces had landed in a clearing near the western forest of Gaia Nova. Their scanners had detected the richest biological compounds in this ancient woodland. It would be their first extraction site. Begin setting up the forward base, Icarus ordered. I want mining operations to begin before the next sunrise. Mock soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, unloading equipment from the ships and establishing a perimeter. Large drilling machines and processing units were positioned at the forest edge. The mock expected the operation to be simple. They had conquered 17 worlds before this one, and none had offered effective resistance once their orbital defenses were breached. As evening approached, the base was nearly operational. Icarus sat in his command center, reviewing maps of the human colony. His plan was to secure the resource-rich areas first, then approach the colony and accept their surrender. Any who resisted would be eliminated. Those who cooperated would serve as labor until the planet was fully harvested. Commander, Vril's voice came through the communication system, sounding strange. We have an unusual situation at the forest perimeter. Explain, Icarus demanded. The native vegetation is growing at impossible rates. Vril transmitted. Our forward base is being overrun by vines that seem to target our equipment specifically. Icarus frowned, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of irritation. Show me. The display screen activated, showing the forest edge. What Icarus saw made him rise from his seat in alarm. Thick, green vines were growing visibly, extending several centimeters per minute. They were wrapping around mock equipment, squeezing with enough force to dent metal panels. More disturbing, they seemed to avoid the paths of mock soldiers, only to surge forward once they passed, as if guided by intelligence. "Cut them down," Icarus ordered. "Burn them if necessary." Mock soldiers attacked the vines with cutting tools and flame projectors. The vines retreated briefly, but new growth appeared from different directions, moving even faster than before. Across Gaia Nova, connected to the Harmony Protocol in Myray's laboratory, the human volunteers experienced the defense through multiple perspectives. Su-Min found herself simultaneously aware of being human and being part of a massive mycelial network beneath the forest floor. The fungi extended for kilometers in all directions, connecting trees, plants, and soil in a living communication web. Through this connection, she guided microscopic organisms to infiltrate mock environmental suits. The microbes targeted specific joints and seals, weakening them gradually. Their suits are designed to filter air. She communicated through the network, but they never expected the filters themselves to be alive. Jinho, merged with the awareness of avian species, coordinated defensive patterns that confused mock targeting systems. Flocks of native birds flew in formations that created false readings on mock sensors. When the invaders fired at these phantom targets, the birds scattered and reformed elsewhere, drawing their attention away from real threats. Even Hojun, the elderly governor, joined his consciousness with the ancient trees, their deep root systems buckling the ground beneath mock-heavy machinery. He felt the slow, powerful strength of trees that had stood for centuries. They moved at their own pace, slow by human standards but unstoppable in their persistence. In the mock-forward base, problems multiplied. Their environmental suits began reporting failures. Strange growths appeared on equipment left unattended for even a few minutes. The soil beneath their heavier machines became unstable, causing them to sink or tilt at dangerous angles. "Commander," a mock soldier reported, panic evident in his voice. "The insects, they're everywhere. They're getting into the ventilation systems." Icarus watched in disbelief as swarms of small flying insects moved in coordinated patterns, targeting specific vulnerabilities in mock equipment. They weren't attacking randomly. They moved with purpose, as if directed by an intelligence that understood mock technology. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Insects don't behave this way." In another sector, Vril supervised attempts to clear a path into the forest for the drilling equipment. Each time they cut down vegetation, new growth appeared with unnatural speed. Plants that should take years to mature were growing in hours. More disturbing, the new growth was different, thicker, more resilient to their cutting tools. "The plants are adapting," Vril reported, his voice tense. "They're evolving to resist our methods." Commander Icarus had conquered worlds where the inhabitants fought with advanced technology, but he had never seen anything like this. It was as if the entire ecosystem was fighting them, learning from each encounter, becoming more effective with each passing hour. "Bring up the chemical dispersal units," he ordered. "We'll defoliate the entire area." The mock deployed large machines that released powerful herbicides designed to kill plant life instantly. The chemicals sprayed in thick clouds toward the forest edge. In Myray's laboratory, Jinho felt the tree's awareness of the incoming threat. Without conscious thought, the forest responded. Wind patterns shifted suddenly, blowing the chemicals back toward the mock base. At the same time, the trees released spores that neutralized the herbicides, transforming them into compounds harmless to native plants but irritating to mock respiratory systems. Mock soldiers began reporting breathing difficulties even inside their environmental suits. The microscopic organisms guided by Su-Min had created tiny breaches in suit seals, allowing the transformed chemicals to enter. "What is happening?" Icarus demanded, as reports of equipment failures and soldier incapacitation flooded the command center. "These are plants and insects. How are they coordinating?" As night fell completely, the mock situation worsened. The ground beneath their base became increasingly unstable as root systems shifted and soil composition changed. Equipment that had been working hours before developed inexplicable failures. Communication systems picked up strange signals that disrupted their transmissions. Vril, returning from an inspection of their perimeter, removed his helmet inside the command center. His blue-gray skin had developed an unusual rash where small breaches had occurred in his suit. "Commander, this is not normal resistance," he said quietly. "The entire planet is fighting us, and it's fighting intelligently." Icarus stared at the display screens showing the chaos outside. "That's impossible. Plants don't think. Animals don't coordinate across species. Look outside," Vril insisted. "Something is directing them." In Myray's laboratory, the human volunteers remained connected to the Harmony Protocol. Hours had passed, but in their merged state, time felt different. They perceived the world through countless perspectives simultaneously. The slow patience of trees, the quick reactions of insects, the aerial view of birds, the microscopic world of bacteria. Myray moved among them, monitoring their vital signs. "They're holding steady," she reported to the medical team. "The neural integration is stable." Through their merged consciousness, the volunteers sensed the muck's confusion and growing fear. They hadn't expected resistance from the environment itself. Their weapons and technology were designed to fight other technological beings, not an entire living planet. By midnight, the muck forward base was in crisis. Half their equipment had failed. Many soldiers were reporting respiratory problems and strange skin conditions. The ground had become so unstable that 2 of their heavy drilling machines had partially sunk into suddenly liquefied soil. Commander Icarus made a difficult decision. "Prepare for tactical withdrawal," he ordered. "We'll return to the ships and reassess from orbit." As the muck began retreating, gathering their functioning equipment, the forest's response changed. The aggressive growth slowed. The swarms of insects dispersed. The ground stabilized enough to allow movement. "It's letting us leave," Vril observed with surprise. Icarus said nothing, his 4 eyes scanning the forest edge. For a moment, he thought he saw the trees moving in patterns that couldn't be explained by wind. It was as if they were communicating. As the mock forces retreated to their ships, the defense network coordinated by the human volunteers continued monitoring them. They wouldn't prevent the mock from leaving the surface. That would only make them more desperate and destructive. But they would ensure the invaders understood that Gaia Nova was not the easy conquest they had anticipated. Connected to the consciousness of the ancient forest, Governor Hejun felt something unexpected. Not hatred for the invaders, but a calm determination to protect life. The forest didn't seek vengeance. It simply recognized a threat and responded accordingly. As the muck ships lifted off, returning to orbit to regroup, the first phase of Gaia Nova's living defense had succeeded. But everyone connected to the Harmony Protocol knew this was only the beginning. From the command bridge of his flagship, Commander Icarus watched the tactical displays with growing horror. His ground forces were retreating in complete disorder, abandoning equipment and sometimes even weapons in their rush to escape the planet's surface. The organized military operation he had planned had fallen apart in less than a day. "This is impossible," he muttered, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in distress. Beside him, his science officer, Meru, analyzed incoming data. "Commander, I've never seen anything like this. The biological responses we're witnessing aren't random defenses. They're coordinated across species, across entire ecosystems. Plants cannot think," Icarus insisted, slamming his fist on the control panel. "Animals cannot plan strategies. The entire planet fights as one organism," his science officer reported, excitement overcoming her professional detachment. "It's as if." Her words were cut short by a sudden alarm. The ship rocked violently, throwing both Mach against the wall. Emergency lights flashed as damage reports flooded the screens. "Multiple ships entering the system," the tactical officer shouted. "Earth Defense Fleet. They've arrived weeks ahead of schedule." Icarus stumbled back to his command chair. This was impossible. The human reinforcements shouldn't have arrived for at least another 10 days. Had their intelligence been so wrong? On the main screen, He watched as dozens of Earth warships emerged from faster-than-light travel, immediately opening fire on his weakened fleet. The mock ships, already taxed by their unsuccessful ground assault, were in no position to mount an effective defense. All ships, emergency retreat, Icarus ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. Set course for the rendezvous point and prepare for immediate jump. As his flagship pulled away from Gaia Nova, Icarus took one last look at the blue-green planet below. Something extraordinary had happened there, something that challenged everything the Mock understood about conquest and power. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Icarus felt a new emotion: doubt. 3 days after the Mock retreat and the arrival of Earth's fleet, Dr. Myray began the delicate process of disconnecting the volunteers from the Harmony Protocol. In her underground laboratory, medical teams stood by as each person was carefully brought back to normal consciousness. Remember, they've experienced something no humans have ever experienced before, Myray cautioned her staff. The transition back may be difficult. Jinho was among the first to be disconnected. As the neural link faded, he felt a profound sense of loss. For 3 days, he had been more than himself. He had been part of countless other minds, other forms of awareness. Returning to the limitations of a single human consciousness felt like being trapped in a tiny room after living under an open sky. When he opened his eyes, the laboratory seemed strangely flat and silent. He could see, but not in the multiple spectrums he had experienced through bird vision. He could hear, but not feel the vibrations through soil and wood that had become part of his extended senses. "How do you feel?" Myray asked gently, helping him sit up. Jinho struggled to find words. "Small," he finally said. "I feel small." Around him, other volunteers were waking up, each with similar expressions of disorientation and loss. Governor Hejun, his face lined with new wrinkles, sat quietly weeping. Not from sadness exactly, but from the overwhelming experience of connection, now ended. Su Min recovered more quickly than most. Within hours, she was able to walk and speak normally, though her conversation was frequently interrupted by sudden silences, as if she were listening to voices no one else could hear. Over the next few days, medical teams monitored the volunteers closely. They discovered unusual changes in brain patterns, new neural pathways that hadn't existed before the connection. The volunteers reported strange new abilities. Jinho could sense weather changes hours before they happened. Su Min could identify plants by their electrical signatures without seeing them. Others found they could communicate with animals on a basic level without the Harmony Protocol. 1 week after the battle, Jinho found his daughter Su Min sitting quietly in the colony's arboretum. It was a peaceful place where plants from Earth grew alongside native Gaia Nova species. Sunlight filtered through the transparent ceiling, creating patterns on the ground. Jinho sat beside her on the bench. "How are you feeling today?" Su Min didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on an ancient tree that had been carefully preserved when the arboretum was built around it. "Did you know," she whispered finally, "that the old grove remembers the settlers who first arrived? The trees sing songs about them." Jinho might have dismissed such a statement as poetic imagination before. Now, he understood it was literally true. During their connection, they had experienced the slow, deep memories of the ancient forests. Memories stored in growth rings and root systems, passed between generations of trees through fungal networks. "I remember," he said. "They remember kindness and cruelty both. They remember every person who ever touched them." Su Min turned to him, tears in her eyes. "How do we go back to normal after experiencing that? How do we pretend we're separate when we know we're not?" Jinho had no easy answer. None of them did. The experience had fundamentally changed them, revealing the artificial nature of boundaries they had always taken for granted. Between species, between individual and community, between conscious and unconscious life. News of Gaia Nova's defense spread quickly throughout human space, then to other civilizations. The story seemed impossible at first, a colony defeating a superior military force by linking their minds with plants and animals. But the evidence was undeniable. Sensor recordings from Earth ships showed the coordinated biological responses. Mock survivors, captured during the battle, spoke with fear of a planet that fought back as a single entity. Scientists from across the galaxy requested permission to study the Harmony Protocol. Politicians debated its implications for warfare and diplomacy. Religious leaders pondered what it meant for long-held beliefs about consciousness and the soul. Dr. Myray refused most requests to share her technology. "It's not ready," she insisted. "We still don't fully understand the long-term effects." The truth was more complex. Myray had seen how easily her creation could be weaponized. In the wrong hands, the Harmony Protocol could become a tool for controlling entire ecosystems, turning life itself into a weapon. She would not allow that to happen. Instead, she established a research institute dedicated to refining and understanding the technology. Only those who passed rigorous ethical screening were allowed to participate. Their goal was not military application, but deepening understanding between species. In the years that followed, Gaia Nova changed in profound ways. The colony's architecture, already partly living, evolved to respond more directly to human needs. Plants and animals showed unusual behaviors around the former volunteers, as if recognizing them as kin rather than separate beings. Other spacefaring species, previously dismissive of humanity's potential, reconsidered their assessments. The Mock, once feared as unstoppable conquerors, found themselves isolated diplomatically, their methods of planetary exploitation now viewed as primitive and short-sighted by more advanced civilizations. 10 years after the battle, Jin-Ho stood with his daughter on a hillside overlooking New Seoul. The city had grown, but not in the way most human settlements expanded. Rather than clearing land for new buildings, the colonists had learned to work with the existing ecosystem, creating structures that enhanced rather than replaced natural formations. "The Earth ambassador is arriving tomorrow," Sumin said. She was now the colony's senior diplomat, respected across the galaxy for her unique ability to bridge perspectives. "And representatives from the Lyri Collective. They're still nervous about meeting the Varan delegation." Jin-Ho smiled. The Lyri and Varan had been enemies for centuries before human diplomats trained in the principles of the Harmony Protocol helped them find common ground. "They'll manage," he said with confidence. Connection always wins in the end. High above them, where the Mock ships had once threatened their destruction, vessels from a dozen different species now peacefully orbited Gaia Nova. They came not as conquerors or exploiters, but as students and partners, drawn by the revelation that had changed humanity's place in the cosmos, that consciousness flourished not in isolation, but in relationship. The Mock never returned to Gaia Nova, but other civilizations came in peace, seeking not to take the planet's resources, but to learn how humans had discovered the most powerful force in the universe: connection. In her laboratory, now expanded into a major research center, Dr. Myra continued refining her creation. The Harmony Protocol was no longer seen as a weapon of last resort, but as a doorway to a new understanding of life itself. Under carefully controlled conditions, volunteers from many species experienced brief connections with Gaia Nova's ecosystem, returning changed and enlightened. "We were never meant to be alone," Myray often told her students. "The illusion of separation was our greatest mistake, and overcoming it is our greatest achievement." And in the ancient forests of Gaia Nova, the trees continued their slow, patient growth, adding new rings that contained the memory of a time when humans and plants and animals had briefly become one mind, and in doing so, had saved their world.